Ever since I was a kid, music's always just told me a story. And I think that's why I got into writing music in the first place. I wanted to partner with people who had stories to tell, and I wanted to help elevate their stories through music. It's an incredible feeling when your music matches the story's tone and scenes are brought to a completely new level. The process of writing a score is just as exciting today as it was when I started over 20 years ago. I've been working with writer-director Ian Boltman now for about 6 years as I've scored several of his Brinkman Project adventures. And when he approached me about writing William Bradford in the American Pilgrims, I just really wondered how he was going to tell the story. I knew Ian had spent the last 2 years of his life painstakingly researching this and consulting some of the hard-to-find primary sources. He then proceeded to have the script vetted through a few historians that are extremely knowledgeable about this particular point in American history. What really drew me to the score was the tension that I'd need to navigate as this drama explores what it means to follow a deep personal conviction despite immense challenges and hardships. What do you do when you sense a call on your life? And for the Pilgrims, that call is the pursuit of religious freedom. And yet that call requires the type of faith and courage and grit that you've never pursued prior to that call. A key instrument for the score were these European alpenhorns that I had found, and they just have this moving quality about them, and that it came to represent the call that William Bradford followed. But then as a counterpoint to that, I wrote this slow ascending bass line. And the bass line sort of came to represent the effort and the grit that Bradford would have to put in order to make that call a reality. Those two ideas sort of embody the concept that faith and effort have this symbiotic relationship. I agonize over writing a main theme, and I think that's putting it pretty mildly. When I thought about William Bradford and what I wanted the theme to accomplish, I just wanted there to be the sense of reaching and not quite grasping what you were reaching for. The concept of religious freedom, being able to worship without interference or intimidation, it was a foreign concept at the time. And that's what I wanted the theme to represent, that small, fragile dream. It took about a day to write the theme and another few more days to flesh out orchestrations and counterlines and to program it. And at the end of the day, I'm just really satisfied with that, the leaps and the melodic tension notes that I held, and just where the theme landed. It just seemed like a really fitting moment for William Bradford. The score really became exciting once we made our way into the Americas. I was able to locate a woodwind player that was really proficient in Native American flutes. So I wrote this theme for Chief Massasoit, who's head of the Wampanoag Confederacy, and we recorded just dozens of versions of his theme with different embellishments, key signatures, and tempos. And then I would put these audio files into my sequencer and write cues around them. I bought this beautiful drum from a Native American drum maker located in the Pacific Northwest. I'd play the drum in different sections of the room with various types of beaters to create this small ensemble sound. There's something so sacred about playing a drum like this. It's like something deep in your soul resonates with the drum. As you know, an actual animal's hide covers it, and an actual tree was used for the frame. This drum became the building block for the entire percussion section. Sometimes you find instruments that have absolutely no relevance to the time period and place you're in, but they just sound right. Once I started writing music in the Americas, I quickly realized that the Native American flute and drum weren't going to be enough to sustain the musical story I needed to tell. I stumbled upon my son's ukulele and began to noodle around, and all of a sudden I played something that just felt right. So I started to improvise over some scenes. I really liked the tone of the nylon strings and the way I cross-picked it. You just knew it wasn't a guitar. You could hear the flesh of my fingers, but it sounded like it could fit in the time period, even though that made no sense. The ukulele became a sort of backbone to the story where an elder Bradford reflected on the past by reading passages of his diary. It just worked, and you really can't say why. As tensions grow between the Pilgrims and various tribes, I begin to introduce new instruments that could support this tension. The alpenhorns that I talked about earlier started to play a lot more clusters, which made you wonder if the Pilgrims had made the right choice in coming all this way to America. They'd experienced so much hardship and loss of life, anybody would wonder about their decision. Tensions rise with a particular man named Peksuit from the Massachusetts tribe as he threatens Phineas Pratt in a pretty uncomfortable way. He tells a disturbing story about the tale of two knives as a sort of metaphor for the situation. I asked my woodwind player to improvise around the scene with some pretty unsettling lines. And then I just really wanted to sort of musically embody this knife. And so what I did was I played a big stick of bamboo, which sort of represented the handle of the knife, and then I bowed my bouzouki, and that sort of represented the stone of the knife. I just wanted to find a way to create this really unsettling support through this metaphor. The music just became this sort of bizarre support for this very tense moment. Ultimately, the scene became pretty elevated as threats of war were made against the Pilgrims and a massacre seems imminent. Some of my favorite sections of the score are the beautiful moments that happen between Squanto and Bradford, particularly on Squanto's deathbed, and also between Winslow and Massasoit. You know, I don't think people realize just how deep and authentic these friendships were. They helped each other during some very hard times. They had a lot of mutual respect for each other. It was fun to watch the orchestral score intertwine with the Native American instruments and find a way to live together in harmony, each maintaining their own unique sound but complementing each other in the process. And I think that's what makes the score unique. It explores faith amidst hardship. It explores two worlds colliding. Their musical sounds are very different. There are moments of extreme tension and moments of true beauty. I hope my score authentically wrestles with the challenges of believing in a call and then what it means to follow through with that call despite immense hardships. This is a story of incredible courage by a small group of people that believe they had an unalienable right to worship their God without intimidation or restriction. And I think that regardless of what you might personally believe, we can all agree that this idea in its purest form is true and beautiful.